There are many secrets hidden in Dubrovnik's name and origin. Some of the town's beginnings are revealed in the historical sources which describe the settling of the island of Laus, separated from the Mediterranean oak forest fringed shore only by a narrow channel. More recent research suggests that both the isle and the shore across from it were settled even before 614. The available sources indicate that it was then that the Avars and the Slavs destroyed the Roman town of Opidorum, today's Savtat. At that time, the mainland was probably inhabited predominantly by the Slavs and Laos by the Romans. Archaeological research shows that a Christian civilization had already been developing in this area before the new settlers arrived. Under the foundations of today's magnificent cathedral, the foundations of two older churches were discovered. The later of the two was already known from historical records. It had been destroyed in the massive earthquake that hit Dubrovnik in 1667 and in the disastrous fire that followed. However, the foundations of a 7th century basilica were discovered more recently. It must have been monumental in its time, at 30 meters long and 15 meters wide. In time, after the settling of the refugees from Epidaurus, the ties between the two neighboring settlements grew stronger, and with this came the mixing of the Croatian and the Roman peoples. The channel dividing the Isle of Laus and the mainland became increasingly shallower due to deposits left by floods in the course of the 10th and 11th centuries, and by the end of the 11th century, the isle was connected with the mainland. The place where the isle joined the mainland is today Dubrovnik's widest and most famous street, known as Plaza or Stradun. The channel that used to divide the island from the mainland still exists under Stradun. The two settlements became fully integrated during the 12th century. After which the building of the unifying and protective town walls was begun, enclosing even the northern suburban area in the 13th century. The street layout was also established, giving Dubrovnik the integrated shape it has today. The first records of the name Dubrovnik date from this time and are found in the documents of 1189 of the Bosnian viceroy Kulin. By the 14th century, the town had become entirely Croatian. The Dominican monastery in Dubrovnik was founded in 1225. The alignment between the church and the state became clear at the beginning of the 14th century as the monastery and the church next to the town ramparts and walls were built. Even though the monastery was built for liturgical purposes, it was also designed to aid the town's defense at its most vulnerable spot. For this reason, the government of Dubrovnik decided to help finance the building of the monastery and ordered all the residents of the neighboring town area to help with the building, emphasizing that the monastery was being built for the salvation, defense, and safety of the entire town of Dubrovnik. Even though encompassed in the town walls, the monastery was skillfully constructed by Dubrovnik's urban planners, using every last inch of the grounds to incorporate the monastery's complex layout. The monastery's position on the steep and bare cliffs, the rough shapes of which are still visible in the southern courtyards at the back of the buildings and basements, is where the ingenuity of Dubrovnik's master builders becomes obvious. From the 14th to the 16th century, these master builders and urban planners managed to construct and harmonize a disparate heritage. Gothic and Renaissance styles are closely interwoven here, but both also display elements characteristic of the Dubrovnik builders of the time. The monastery library has had a turbulent history, but it remains one of the most valuable medieval libraries in Croatia and indeed in Europe. It has been moved 3 times, and more than half of its books were destroyed in the terrible earthquake of 1667 and after the fall of the Republic of Dubrovnik. Some of the codices that were considered lost at that time are today kept in the French National Library in Paris, the Vatican Library in Rome, the Croatian Academy of Science and Arts Archive in Zagreb, and the National Library in Budapest. Of immense artistic value is the Great Bible from the 11th century, while Anton Koperberg's book catalogue is the oldest in the world and has great rarity value. Today, the library has over 25,000 books and 249 incunabula, 37 of which are Savonarolas. The museum collection, first exhibited in 1969, is housed in the monastery's east wing. Paintings from the Dubrovnik school are of special importance for the collection. The collection gives an overview of the painting, sculptural, literary, music, goldsmith, and religious culture in the classical European city-state from the 14th to the 19th century. Among the important relics are Saint Dominic's finger, brought over from Bologna in 1233, the Holy Cross of King Milutin Uroš II, and the head of Saint Stephen, the first Hungarian king, who was crowned in his hometown of Esztergom on Christmas Day 1000. Saint Vinko Fererski's miracle work is recorded on numerous church tablets, while the jewelry of Dubrovnik's women testifies to their religious devotion to Our Lady of the Rosary. The works of Arabic writers and writers from the area of today's Italy tell of the strength and greatness of Dubrovnik's merchant fleet as early as the 11th century. Dubrovnik then became a powerful local merchant country and an intermediary between the east and the west. At this time, the city-state of Dubrovnik signed many contracts with major world powers. In the 12th century, Dubrovnik was governed by a local rector, elected by the citizens, and in 1205 the Venetians assumed direct control of the town. The Venetian rule lasted for the next 150 years and had a great influence on Dubrovnik's system of government. While governed by the Venetians, a Venetian rector and bishop ruled Dubrovnik, and Venice tried everything to win absolute control of the town. In the 13th century, Dubrovnik repeatedly rebelled against the Venetian authorities. Although slowing down the development of the town, the Venetians never succeeded in taking control of Dubrovnik's trade. With the peace treaty of Zadar in 1358, Dubrovnik recognized the supreme authority of the Hungarian-Croatian rulers, who did not encroach on Dubrovnik's internal system, the government, or its merchant and maritime affairs. This allowed Dubrovnik to develop into a completely independent and modern aristocratic republic. Accordingly, the former name, Comunitas Ragusina, the municipality of Dubrovnik, was changed to Republika Ragusina, the Republic of Dubrovnik. In 1399, the Republic of Dubrovnik extended from Stone to Arasats on the coast, and the annexation of Konavli and Cavtat gave Dubrovnik its final shape. The Statute of Dubrovnik, which has existed since 1272, united the local customs and Roman law. Major institutions in Dubrovnik were established very early. Medical services started work in 1301. The first pharmacy was established in 1317 and is still functioning. A refuge for old people opened in 1347. Quarantine was set up in Lazarati in 1377, and a 20-kilometer water supply system was constructed in 1436. It is also interesting to note that the Republic was one of the first to abolish slavery, as early as 1418. In the 15th century, Turkey gradually achieved dominion over the Mediterranean, and Dubrovnik quickly established close commercial ties, but paid tribute money to ensure freedom of trade. After the 1526 Battle of Mohač, when the Turks defeated the Hungarian-Croatian army, Dubrovnik stopped paying tribute to the king, and with that ended the period of Hungarian-Croatian power over Dubrovnik. During its golden age, the Republic of Dubrovnik accumulated its material wealth from silver and lead mining in the hinterland mines in Bosnia and Serbia, and from a thriving trade with the developed parts of Europe. The production and export of salt from local salt mines, especially from the Stone area, was one of the major contributing factors to Dubrovnik's economic prosperity. Dubrovnik had a monopoly on salt from the Neretva to the Drim, making other Balkan countries dependent on it. Dubrovnik's shipbuilding was remarkably well developed and innovative for its time. By the middle of the 16th century, Dubrovnik already had 180 large ships, which sailed all the way to England and beyond. Due to the development of trade, Dubrovnik had established consulates in over 80 cities throughout Europe by the end of the 18th century. The entire political activity of all the officials of the Republic of Dubrovnik, but also private interests and ethical norms, was subordinate to the good of the state. State interest came before the interests of individuals, as was clearly stated on the entrance of the Rector's Palace Hall, where the Grand Council assembled. How highly skilled Dubrovnik's diplomacy really was is shown by the fact that Dubrovnik never launched any invasions, yet managed to occupy new territories, that it gained the Pope's approval to engage in trade with the Levant at the time of the most violent conflicts between Christians and Muslims, and that it did not participate in any of the Christian invasions of the Ottoman Empire, but maintained strong commercial ties with it. Also thanks to Dubrovnik's far-sighted diplomacy, the Republic of Dubrovnik was among the first European countries to recognize America's independence. The Republic of Dubrovnik was abolished in 1808, not because it could no longer sustain itself, but because it was occupied by Napoleon's army. Dubrovnik's grandeur did not fade with the end of the Republic, and the town lived on and developed further. Along with maritime affairs and trade, Other fields of activity, in tune with the times, were gradually developed. Dubrovnik was also discovered by travelers from all over the world. Since the 1950s, Dubrovnik has experienced a sharp increase in tourism. Many high-quality hotels have been built, as well as hotel resorts in the town's immediate vicinity. Čilipi Airport has greatly aided the development of tourism. At the end of the 1980s, Dubrovnik was one of the most highly esteemed European tourist destinations. In the autumn of 1991, the so-called Yugoslav National Army carried out an unprovoked attack against the unarmed people of the town of Dubrovnik and the surrounding area. After a glorious and rich past, this was the first time Dubrovnik had been attacked and destroyed. For several months, the beauty that people had created there was systematically shelled, looted, and burnt. To secure their freedom, the people of the old Dubrovnik had erected some of the world's most beautiful town walls, hoping they would be impressive enough to keep potential invaders out. In 1991, the walls again proved strong enough to block the most barbaric invasion of Dubrovnik to date. Dubrovnik's town walls are very well preserved and are regarded by many as the most beautiful in Europe. They inspired awe in invaders for centuries and helped maintain the freedom of the Republic of Dubrovnik. 1,940 meters long and over 25 meters high, they have provided the town with effective protection. The construction of the walls, much like the rest of the town, began in the 8th century and lasted until the 16th century. The wall consists of 5 bastions, 3 round and 12 square-shaped towers, 2 corner towers, and several other forts. There are parts of the walls which are made up of lower walls, with 10 semicircular forts built by the Italian architect Michelozzo. The town was also protected by 2 separate forts, Revelin from the east and Lovrijenac from the north. The Mincheta fortress, which faces north, is the highest fort of the walls. Mincheta gives one of the loveliest views of the old town. Many distinguished master builders took part in its construction, but it was completed by Juraj Dalmatinac. Its appearance changed several times during construction, but it has had its current appearance since 1464. The Bokar fortress is located at the northwest side of town and protects the Pillar Gate. It was designed by the Renaissance architect Michelozzo. It was built from 1461 until 1570, and it is one of the oldest forts with cannons. The Lovrijenac fortress is located on a 36-meter cliff to the west of the town, outside the walls. This awe-inspiring fortress dominates and guards the west entrance to the town from the sea and the land. According to historical records, it was constructed in a very short time. Its walls facing the town are considerably thinner than the outer walls to save the town if Lovrijenac fell into enemy hands. Nowadays, Lovrijenac is one of the best-known venues for the staging of Shakespeare's Hamlet. The Revelin fortress was constructed in the 16th century, from 1500 to 1538, and is located on the east side, outside the town walls. Its irregular square shape was designed by architect Anton Faramolino for the purpose of protecting the town harbour, the Ploče Gate, and the town bridge. The St. John fortress is located at the south side of the town walls, and it was designed to protect the town's harbour. Its construction was divided into 4 phases, from 1346 to 1557. The town harbour was closed by a chain between the St. John fortress and the breakwater cache, built in the 15th century. Today, the aquarium and the maritime museum are located in the St. John fortress. There are 2 main gates to the old town of Dubrovnik. The Pillar Gate is located on the west side of the town and was constructed in 1471 by the local master builder Paskoje Milicevic, who designed it in the Gothic style with 2 stone arcades. Next to the gate is a wooden drawbridge, which was lifted every evening with the closing of the town gates. Above the gate is the statue of Saint Blaise, the town's patron saint. The east town entrance is the Procha Gate, also constructed by a local master builder, Miho Hranjac, in 1628. This gate has a wooden drawbridge too, like the Pillar Gate, which was also lifted every evening when the gates were closed, and lowered in the morning when the gates opened. There is a statue of Saint Blaise above this entrance as well. Saint Blaise is found on all major institutions, as well as on the town's coat of arms. A bishop and a martyr who, according to legend, miraculously saved the town, was chosen as the town's patron saint by a law passed in 1190. The Feast of St. Blaise is celebrated on February the 3rd, led by a great procession through the town. The first mention of this celebration is in the records of the humanist Philippe de Versis from the 15th century. The gilt statue of the saint from the 13th century is kept in the cathedral's treasury, along with other relics. St. Saviour Church is located at the beginning of the Pillar side of Stradun. The Senate decided to build this church to appease the wrath of God after one of the terrifying earthquakes. Legend has it that even the noble women of Dubrovnik helped carry the stones and wood needed to build the church. The 2 fountains at the opposite ends of the main street of the old town in a way encapsulate the intimate nature of Dubrovnik. The 2 fountains are placed in Dubrovnik's plan as the 2 ends of an imaginary church. The big fountain, with 16 carved stone heads, represents a church font, while the slender small one under the bell tower represents a smaller font. In the 15th century, from 1438 to 1444, when Onofrio della Cava constructed these fountains, they were part of the town's water supply system, which brought water from Rijeka Dubrovačka. The shops established in Stradun all had their doors and windows typically linked in the way that the people of Dubrovnik refer to as the jointed door. These shops were the places where traditional trade took place. The look of the houses, their shape and height, were made uniform in the 17th century during the renovation following the earthquake. The Franciscan monastery was built in the Romanesque Gothic style. Its construction began in 1337, but it was almost entirely destroyed in the 1667 earthquake. The monastery's cloister with the capitals built by the local master builder Mihoje Brajkov, is one of the most significant architectural works. The obvious transition from the Romanesque to the Gothic style makes this work all the more interesting. The capitals are predominantly Romanesque, but the bestiary motifs add a Gothic spirit. One of the world's oldest pharmacies is located within the monastery. Established in 1317, it is still functioning today. The pharmacy's inventory, ceramics, and laboratory equipment are now kept in the Franciscan Monastery's museum as an important part of Dubrovnik's history. The Franciscan Monastery Library holds extremely valuable copies of over 30,000 old books, among which are 22 incunabula and around 1,500 handwritten documents. The Sponza Palace is one of the most significant town buildings. It has had various functions throughout the history of the Republic of Dubrovnik. It was everything from an ordinary house to customs building, state treasury and mint, up until the end of the 19th century. The Sponza Palace is a mixture of the Gothic and Renaissance styles. Today, it has the original clock mechanism from the town's bell tower, which was built in the 16th century. On it are two bronze figures known as Baro and Maro, which strike the hour. Between the Sponza Palace and St. Blaise's Church, in the middle part of Stradun, is Orlando's column. It symbolizes freedom, libertas, which was the idea on which the Republic of Dubrovnik was founded. The column was built by Anton Dubrovčanin in 1418. Orlando's forearm was used for measuring length in the customs building Sponza during the time of the Republic. St. Blaise's Church was built between 1705 and 1717 on the site of a building from 1368, which had been destroyed in a fire. The church was built by the Venetian architect and sculptor Gropelli. There is a gilt statue of St. Blaise on the main altar, holding a model of Dubrovnik from the 16th century. The 35-meter-high town bell tower was first built in 1444, but it collapsed and was rebuilt in 1928. The modern clock mechanism with the bronze figure of Maro and Baro is a faithful copy of the clock from 1487, which was part of the old tower. An original piece from the old tower and clock is a bell weighing 2,000 kilograms, cast by John the Baptist of Rab in 1506. The Rector's Palace was the seat of the Rector of the Republic of Dubrovnik. The building is a mixture of the Gothic and Renaissance styles, probably due to the devastation of the palace in two gunpowder explosions, first in 1435 and then in 1463, as well as in the earthquake of 1667. The renovation was carried out by the well-known builders Onofrio, Michelozzo and Juraj Dalmatinac. The Rector's Palace also has the only monument that the Republic ever erected in honor of a citizen, the monument to the famous 16th century seafarer and donor Miho Pratsat. The cathedral was built on the foundations of a 7th century basilica and a later cathedral, built from the 12th to the 14th century in the Romanesque style. Today's cathedral was built after the earthquake in 1667. The reconstruction was completed in 1713 by the master builder Katicic. In the cathedral is the močnik, or treasury, which holds 138 gold and silver reliquaries collected throughout Dubrovnik's fascinating history. The Baroque-style Jesuit church of St. Ignatius is located at the top of the grand staircase, which was modelled on the Spanish steps in Rome and built in 1738. The synagogue was constructed in the 15th century and is one of the oldest preserved synagogues in Europe. It stayed open during the Second World War and did not suffer any damage. More recently, especially since the middle of the 20th century, new modern residential areas have been developed in the immediate neighborhood of the old town. A modern city infrastructure has also been built. One of the more recent examples is the beautiful bridge over Rijeka Dubrovačka. The old town still has a highly intensive life. Dubrovnik is among the few towns which has been able to maintain such continuity of life, and at the same time preserve the town's original form. The residents of Dubrovnik look after its rich heritage, passed down to them by their ancestors, with the same zeal that people had at the time of Dubrovnik's beginnings.